What is going on, everybody? In today's video, we are going to be doing a bit of a part 2 to my other Resolute Pocket Dimensions video, because now that we know that Omega Red is not coming in a reasonable time before this, I think we should be discussing some alternatives to him and the types of 4th or 5th character slots that you want to bring along for the ride. So in this video, we'll be looking at some of the non-obvious choices, because I think there are a couple without a doubt that you'll be wanting to take, but for these last slots, I want to talk about what options there are and the merits of using them, and hopefully this will give you a better idea of who you want to take with you on this Pocket Dimension adventure. So without further ado, let's get this show started. Alright, so there's two things that I want to do in this video today. One, I kind of want to share with you what my plans are for my main account here, but secondly, I also, for those of you who are watching my channel who, aren't level 85, who still want to progress some in Pocket Dimensions, but don't have all of this stuff that I'm going to be talking about, I do want to share in the second half of the video what I'm doing with my baby account as well. That way it can give you guys a better idea of sort of what I'm doing anyways, and my baby account's level 79, so for those of you who might be around that level, I can kind of share with what my plans are there. It might vary a little bit, and not too much, but I think that I'm kind of going with some of the same characters, and some of the logic here that I'm going to be talking about will be extending over there, but I kind of want to share just like from a power level perspective in terms of the difference between my two accounts. So we're going to start right off the bat here. If you're a player that has Omega Red and you're watching this, honestly, he is obviously going to be your first choice. But I'm not going to be focusing on that in this video because this is a no-brainer. So if you have Omega Red and you haven't geared him for whatever reason, make sure you do that, because he's probably going to make this significantly easier, and especially alongside someone like Cersei. They are the two newest characters in the game, and honestly, this will probably make... sorry, technically Scarlet Spider is newer, but as far as stat creep and power goes, honestly, unless you have like a 6 yellow Scarlet Spider, I think Omega Red and Cersei are probably the two strongest choices here in terms of viability. But we're not going to be talking about Omega Red, but we are going to start about the ones that I think are irreplaceable, characters that you absolutely have to have. And once again, that's going to be Cersei and Shuri. Believe it or not, I still, even though I have a 7 yellow, 7 red Shuri, I still would recommend Shuri regardless. If you have her only at 5 yellow or whatever red, I would still use her. And why? Because she's the only healer, she's the only reliable, realistic healer on this team. Yes, there's Groot down here, but his healing is balls, and you're not going to want to use him. Yes, Doctor Strange can heal a little bit on his ult, but that's balls too, and it has a super long cooldown. So realistically, Shuri is the only reliable possible healing choice here. And so between Shuri and Cersei, who I'm not even going to go into Cersei's kit. We all know it. It's insane. It has Dark Dimension stuff in there. These two are characters that you absolutely have to have. So let's say that you don't have Omega Red in here, so we need to talk about 3 other characters that you might want to add in here. 2, I suppose, if you do have Omega Red. And there's a couple of options here. You can see the characters that I have on the hearts. These are the main options in my opinion. And so since we have the Scarlet Spider event, depending on whether or not you spent or not, even if you're at the 2-star level, I would consider this if you're going to use them alongside Miles. So that would give you 2 more character options here, but I would only probably use Scarlet Spider and Miles together. I mean, if you wanted to use just one standalone, I probably would take Scarlet Spider over Miles, I think. But realistically, to get the benefits out of it, you kind of want to use both of them. That would be good. And the reason for this is a lot of debuff that they do as well. Scarlet Spider, I know it's not a raid, but he still has quite a bit, there's some slows that goes on, defense down as well, so that's really helpful. And just in general, he's going to help, I think, with the other web warriors, even though, like I said, it's not in raids. You still get some of this other text in here, which does help. And he does heal a little bit, even though it's only 1% of the character. That'll help on top of Shuri. Shuri's not a huge healer anyways. She has some decent healing, but overall, I think that it's not the best. So that's why I use her with a healer ISO to give her even more healing. And this might be something that you might want to consider, actually. And I never really said that before, But you might want to consider the fact that you may want to adjust your ISOs depending on what characters you're using, because this is different from using set teams like a Web Warrior team or Eternals or whatever you're using Shuri with. You know, you need to make sure that the right characters for the right ISOs, aka, you know, I have Striker here for Miles and Scarlet Spider, but I only actually have Cersei in terms, and I have Omega Red here with Striker as well. So I have 3 Strikers, but only one person that can actually apply any vulnerabilities. So I think what I might do is I might change one of my Web Warriors to a Raider. That way, probably Scarlet Spider. That way I have a way to sort of apply more vulnerabilities than what exists on my, you know, my page right now on my roster. So that's a bit of a problem too. In terms of alternative characters here, I actually really want to give a shout out to some characters that people might not think about. And the first thing I want to talk about is first person I want to talk about here is Yondu. So Yondu got a rework this patch here in 5.9 with the Ravagers, and he actually saw a fairly significant stat bump. Not as much as some of the other characters like the Web Warriors, OG Spider-Man and Miles, but Yondu actually got a fairly significant rework as well. You know, his kit and his summons and the way the Ravager minions work now is significant, and that's why I want to raise this here. So you know, being able to summon each of the Ravagers is really good here, and they actually do quite a bit. So you apply speed up to self and all Ravager allies on the summons, but really it's the summoners and the reworks to the Ravager minions that I want to talk about. So Boomerang specifically is really going to help add some more extra debuffs. So his basic attack here, you know, applies slow. Now it does always apply slow if you have, I actually think you need Yondu's basic at T4, don't you, to get the level 7? That's how the summons work, unless the only difference is Mr. Sinister, whereas if you max the cloning ability, it maxes everything. But in this case, I think you need the T4s in the basic, which I would not recommend. But anyways, he's got a 75% chance to apply slow on his basic, and he gains speed up the minions. But here it's the special that's really important. So if you do T4 Yondu special, you should get this as well, which is his ability Full Blast for the Ravager Boomer minions. And at level 6 anyways, it reduces speed bar by 20% for primary and secondary targets, filling his own speed bar as well for those who are unfamiliar with the rework to the Ravagers. But if you T4 this, you're getting an additional 10%, meaning that it's a 30% turn bar rewind. And if you guys know, like, Dark Dimension in general, typically there's a lot of characters on the field, like maybe not 10, but like 7+. And so there's a good chance that this special alone is going to knock back a significant amount of turn bar to a lot of different characters. And think if you happen to get this off more than once, like you could have multiple boomers on the field here doing multiple turn rewinds. Now it's only 3 ability energies, so that's really good in terms of how fast it's going to come back around. He gets speed bar for himself, and he also gets speed up when he uses his basic. So his turn's going to come around pretty quickly. You also do get the Ravager Stitcher minion, which has seen an improvement as well. On spawn, of course, when they get summoned, they're going to give all of these debuffs to Yondu as well. So you're going to get regeneration to Yondu when you summon the Stitcher. You're also going to get offense up, I believe here it is, with the Boomer minion. So for 2 turns to self and all Ravager allies. So every time that Yondu's summoning, he's giving himself buffs, but it's also giving the buffs to the summons as well, which is really, really nice. And you get a percentage life drain here on Stitcher's heal. So it steals 10% health from the primary target and then does it a second time. So basically, whenever you use this, you're draining at a 20% health from a single target and then redistributing it to your allies. And that's really good in a Dark Dimension perspective, because that's going to take a lot of hit points off of them. Now, I heard that they actually don't have as much hit points as characters like in Dark Dimension 4, for example. But nonetheless, I think that this is still going to help quite a bit, and this could be really good. So Yondu is a really good choice here as a 5th character. Problem is, he is a bit of he is a mystic character. So as far as some of the other more important mystic characters go in the game at large, he may not be a huge priority. But if you have decent red stars, if you have like 4 or 5 or higher red stars on Yondu, I would definitely consider him as a possible option. So that's kind of like alternative option number 1. The second, for similar but different reasons, I want to talk about Red Skull. So he's also a summoner as well. He is a bio character. I have 5 red star for him. I'm not sure if he's going to be part of I don't think he's going to be part of my team for my main account. But he is someone that I am actually going to be using for my baby account. And we're going to get to that when we finish talking about all of these individual characters. And some of the reason here is that when he does get a summon, which is only on a cooldown of 4, it's not as high as some of the other characters. It does give speed bar for self and all allies by 30%. Some people might be familiar familiar with how Red Skull works and using him from like a turn bar perspective in getting ahead of other people. And the Hydra minions actually aren't terrible, so they do summon mainly Hydra scientists and Hydra rifle troopers, and the Hydra scientists can provide death proof, and this will give you alternative ways to heal outside of just Shuri. So if you're thinking that your Shuri isn't big enough and you want to consider extra healing, Red Skull is an interesting way. I don't know if I would stack Red Skull and Yondu for the reasons that I think that their summons would stack up, and that could be a bit of a problem, and that you might fill up your space too much on the field. But I would actually consider one of the two of them if you need to, either Red Skull or Yondu. They provide different summons, but they do different things, which is really nice here. Hydra Rifle Trooper, largely in this case, is just mostly AoE damage, you know, but it's the scientists that are probably going to help you more longer term in the battle, as long as they stay alive and they chuck out death proofs at different players or different allies. So that would be quite helpful too. The Storm Assault also, if you put a T4 into this, it actually gives offense up to all allies, regardless of them being Hydra. So this is interesting too. Otherwise, it's to 3 random allies or self. So it's not really everyone. And if you have a lot of summons on the field, this can cause a problem and, you know, not give it to who you want to. But if you do have summons on the field and you have the T4s, then it's actually giving the offense up to all of them, including the minions. So that might help too. And it's actually not too bad. So I do want to give a special shout out to Red Skull. He might be a character that you might want to consider investing into. Now, this next one is going to be a 2-for-1 here. We did talk about Miles and Scarlet Spider kind of being a 2-for-1. Well, we're going to talk about Magic and Storm. So for those of you who are kind of familiar with Storm's kit, this might be a little bit of an obvious inclusion here. But basically it comes down to the fact that her ultimate Storm of the Century, you know, can contain a lot of charges. So it attacks all targets for 100% damage and then 90% per charge. Now, she can actually get, and that actually more if she has the T4s. And if this character has 20 charges, this attack cannot miss. Now, with Magic, this actually helps her to stack up her charges quicker. But if you get the T4s in the basic, this increases her maximum charges to 20, which is really, really nice. So you're talking about like 20 charges. Hypothetically, if you get the T4s, 20 plus, let's say, 100% damage per charge, you're getting a well over a 2,000% damage attack. So some people that I've talked to, you know, their plans are to kind of like use some of the early nodes, some of early on, you know, that are kind of easy to build up Storm's charges and then to just let it rip on the final node, and then it's going to completely clear the wave that's starting there, and that's going to really help you. Now, whether or not you use Storm long term and that's someone you're going to be using every stage, I'm not sure if this is going to be the case. I'm not sure really Magic is someone that you want to use every single node either. I don't think that she has a wider viability in this sense, but I think maybe for like say node 1, if you have a decently built up Magic and Storm, I think you might want to just use them for that first node and help build up Storm's charges to about 15 to 20, and then maybe let it rip on a future node, maybe the very last node. That might help you clear it a lot quicker. Who knows? Maybe it's gonna like wipe out half the node in one turn. So that's why I wanted to put that as a special inclusion. But as far as just a standard, you know, every single node kind of team, I'm not sure if Magic and Storm are the ones for me personally. So that kind of leaves us here with not too many options. Like I said, realistically, you probably want to start with Shuri, Cersei. I would actually do both of the Web Warriors and then choose one of the Summoners, and I think that's a pretty good team that you could be using, whether it's Red Skull or whether it's Yondu. Maybe this is Red Star dependent here for you, but I think both of them bring something to the table, and I think that'll also help by having summons on the field that some of your characters won't get damaged directly. So if there's a strong single target damage, or, you know, something with debuffs that might affect some of your other characters, you know, if it hits the minions, great, that's fine. You know, I think that's where it might be helpful. In terms of these other characters, I will give a small mention to some of these. I'm not even going to bother talking about Star-Lord, Black Panther, or She-Hulk, or Doctor Strange, really, at this point. I don't think you should be using them flat out. There might be an argument to be using Groot, you know, because of his support capabilities, if you have really high red stars, if you have him at Gear Tier 13 or 14, because you somehow did this in the past, if you're a veteran player, but otherwise, I really wouldn't consider doing this. Multiple Man's an interesting one, but without his extra X-Factor members, I'm not sure you get a significant bonus here. You would definitely need to get the T4s on his passive, which allows him to heal himself on death of an allied dupe. But otherwise, he actually doesn't really contribute too much on his own. You know, he fills the battlefield. So he's another one in the summoner category. Don't use multiple man with Yondu or Red Skull. So if you're considering a summoner or someone with summons, in this case, dupes qualify as well, choose one of the three, Red Skull, Yondu, or multiple man. Do not do two of the three, because then you're going to have too many characters on the field and you're not going to be able to utilize your summon abilities. So make sure you do that. His clones, like, they can copy positive effects. I think steal positive effects. I'm so dumb when it comes to multiple man because I don't actually use them a ton. I think it's his basic attack here. Yeah, copy and clear one positive effect. So, you know, that might help on the dupes for positive stats effects if you need to. It gives it to multiple man, and that's really about all he's really good for. He doesn't really have any damage skills. He's just kind of spamming the field with clones. So, you know, it's up to you if you want to take him. If you have really good red stars, he might help as a diversion, but otherwise, that's basically all he's going to do. We'll have a quick shout out to Misty Knight as well. I don't personally use her that much. She's gear tier 13 for me. I mean, standalone, she's okay. Her stats are not super stellar, and outside of war defense, her stats are not super amazing either. She does have a low cooldown stun and heal block. You know, it chains for an ability block, so it's okay. It is low cooldown, but her damage isn't super high. She can clear. She actually has some decent debuffs. I'm not sure if it's completely necessary though when you're using characters like Cersei and some of these other ones with, you know, Miles can also clear status effects on his basic. Scarlet Spider has some more debuffs. Again, I'm not sure if it's super necessary to have Misty Knight, but if you have high red stars, you can consider doing that. So basically, the ones that are in the hearts are the ones that I would consider the most. Some of these other ones you could consider if you're really desperate. Now, I want to kind of look at my baby account. I want to share with you guys what I'm up to on this account. So I have this over here as well. And basically, I'm working on the top 5. So right now, I'm putting some more investment into Scarlet Spider. I just recently got him unlocked, even though he's a 2 yellow, 2 red. I'm still going to use him because over Misty Knight, I think that's probably a better idea for me personally. So these 5 are what I'm going for. I never really invested in Yondu on this account, but for other people, some more veteran players who might have Yondu invested in, I think that might be a good idea for you, possibly, for the reasons that I mentioned. So I would consider going with one summoner, whether that's Red Skull, whether that's Yondu, whether that's multiple man. Completely up to you, but the bare bones, you know, you really need to have Cersei and Shuri. I think I might T14 Shuri actually before Pocket Dimensions goes live. Whether or not I'm able to clear both runs on my baby account may be up for grabs. I'm not sure if I will, and I don't know if this is going to get you to the end in 7 days for 2 runs if you're in the position that I'm at. I just kind of wanted to share this with you just to show you what I'm up to anyways and what my plans are for this account. So I'm going to plan on going for Miles, Scarlet Spider, Red Skull, Shuri, and Cersei. For a lot of the reasons that I already mentioned, I think that this is probably the best arrangement for lower players if you want to clear some nodes. Once again, I don't know how far you're necessarily going to get, but I think these are the best choices for the characters that are available now. Also, you're going to clearly get a lot of use out of the Web Warriors anyways because they're a brand new team that came out this patch, and Cersei is good, and honestly, I think Shuri's worth investing in still at this point as well. Red Skull is something that I'm doing because he is viable in Doom War 2.7 to 2.9, so I kind of need to bring him up a little bit anyways. I don't think I'm going to be taking him up to gear tier 13 or higher. I may raise his level up a little bit more, but otherwise, and I may invest in the T4 in this for the offense up for the team, but aside from that, I don't really plan on doing too much with him. I'm going to put more into Scarlet Spider and hope that I can get away with at least clearing some of the nodes with these 5 characters. So let me know in the comments down below which characters that you plan to take. Hopefully some of this advice helped you, and of course we have Pocket Dimensions starting up on Friday, so keep in mind there. And yes, until next time everyone, stay safe and healthy, and I'll see you on Friday, well, for Pocket Dimensions, and hopefully we'll talk about this some more as it goes on. So until then, see you guys later.